Hi, I'm John with the Cisco Security Business Group, and today I'll be talking about Cisco Advanced Malware Protection for Endpoints, or AMP for Endpoints for short, and how in the face of ever-increasing cyber attacks, AMP can enable visibility, context, and control for your customers. In this video, I want to address a few things: the endpoint security marketplace, customer pain points when it comes to endpoint security, how Cisco AMP for Endpoints can solve those problems, what type of buyers you should be talking with, and information on where to learn more. Let's start with the endpoint security market. Endpoint security solutions generally fall into two different categories. You've got your endpoint protection platforms, or EPP. These are your typical big antivirus suites that focus solely on preventing attacks. And then you have your endpoint detection and response, or EDR, which help you detect and respond to attacks if something has already gotten inside. AMP for Endpoints, while primarily an EDR solution, actually straddles both categories, providing the detection and response capabilities of an EDR with some prevention capabilities found in an EPP. It's a next-gen endpoint security solution, if you will. And the EDR market right now is hot, and that means a huge opportunity for Cisco sellers and partners. The EDR market is growing at a 48% compound annual growth rate. That's the fastest growing segment in security right now. But why is the market so hot? Because there's a real need for effective endpoint security. Organizations today are under a constant state of attack, and those attacks are headed for endpoints. The reality today is that it's no longer a question of if malware will breach your environment, but when. And going a step further, how long has malware been inside and you just don't know about it? Malware today is too sophisticated to think we can prevent all attacks. So if you know something is going to get inside, you need to deal with it quickly before damage can be done. Only with an effective endpoint security solution can customers get the visibility to detect malware quickly, contain it, and eliminate it. Cisco Amp for Endpoints solves these problems. Amp for Endpoints is a cloud-managed, next-gen endpoint security solution that can prevent attacks and block malware at point of entry, but also if something manages to get inside, it provides continuous monitoring and threat detection to quickly spot malicious behavior, and response capabilities to eliminate threats before damage can be done. This provides a first and last line of defense for your customers' endpoints. So how do we do it? Let's start with prevention. The first step to preventing attacks is hardening your defenses using the best global threat intelligence. Our Talos team is an industry-leading security intelligence and research group. They're finding threats that no one else has seen before and pushing that information to AMP for Endpoints so that customers are protected 24/7. We also prevent attacks by blocking malware at point of entry. AMP will initially inspect files, and if they're deemed bad, we'll automatically block malware in real time. Part of this frontline detection capability is powered by our built-in antivirus engine. Now, let's be very clear about what this AV engine is and what it isn't. This is not a replacement for one of those large AV suites with all the bells and whistles. But it does provide that signature-based detection, so if customers want to consolidate their detection capabilities into one agent on AMP for Endpoints, they can do that. We also have proactive protection capabilities built in. Our vulnerabilities feature shows you all the software on your endpoints that's vulnerable to malicious attacks so that you can then patch them and close any potential attack pathway. Our low prevalence feature shows you applications on endpoints that are kind of flying under the radar, and it lets you take a closer look to see if there's any malicious behavior happening. And finally, I can't go without mentioning a pretty big differentiator for us. It's our built-in sandboxing capabilities powered by ThreatGrid. The sandbox lets you submit a file for analysis against over 700 behavioral indicators, so you can see what that file is trying to do and if it's bad. AMP can then automatically block and quarantine the file. Next up is continuous monitoring and detection, and the goal with these capabilities is decreasing an organization's time to detection. The industry average right now is 100 days. With AMP for Endpoints, we bring that down to 13 hours or less. So how is AMP for Endpoints letting us detect threats faster? The key to this is our continuous monitoring and analysis of files. We know that no prevention method is 100%, and something can always get in. So even after files are allowed onto the endpoint, we continue to watch them, and that's regardless of file disposition. Good file, unknown file, it doesn't matter. We continuously monitor and record all file behavior and activity. If malicious behavior is detected at some point in the future, AMP can automatically block the file across all endpoints and show the security team the entire recorded history of the malware's behavior. You can see where it came from, where it's been, what it's doing, across all of your endpoints, PCs, Macs, Linux, mobile devices. This lets you understand the full scope of the compromise, and it enables what we call retrospective security. It's the ability to essentially roll back time on the attack even after malware has gotten inside. This continuous monitoring is giving you that deep visibility you need and letting you spot malicious behavior when it happens, and that's why we can detect threats so quickly. Amp for Endpoints also provides agentless detection through our integration of Cognitive Threat Analytics, or CTA, into Amp for Endpoints. CTA inspects web proxy logs, sends that information to the Amp for Endpoints management console, and it gives customers a view into the devices where no agent is installed, and it lets customers actually detect an average 30% more infections across their entire environment. Next up is response. We want customers to be able to respond, contain, and eliminate threats quicker and more effectively. So naturally, with our continuous monitoring capability, the security team can understand an attack from start to finish, and this helps them connect the dots and just respond to threats faster and more efficiently. But we also provide investigative features that make hunting for threats easier. Our endpoint search feature lets customers search across all of their endpoints to look for traces of malware artifacts or any exposure to an indication of compromise. Now, regardless of all this visibility, you still have to be able to stop malware, and that's where AMP provides control. When AMP finds a threat, it shows you all the endpoints that have seen it. And then, with a simple right-click on the management console, you can surgically contain and remediate that threat across all endpoints throughout your entire ecosystem. So that's what AMP for Endpoints brings to the table in terms of prevention, monitoring and detection, and response. A few more things I want to mention. The first is the fact that AMP for Endpoints is not a siloed point product. It has an API that lets customers sync AMP for Endpoints with their other security tools or their SIEMs. But most importantly, AMP for Endpoints is part of the larger integrated security ecosystem of AMP Everywhere. In other words, AMP for Endpoints can share and correlate information from the endpoint to the network IPS, to the firewall, to your web or email gateways, the list goes on. So that when you see a threat in one place, your whole entire security ecosystem can respond systemically and faster. This integrated architecture is a big deal for security teams, so make sure to talk about it. I also want to talk about services. The first is our AMP for Endpoints deployment services that can assist and accelerate your customer's deployment. The second, your customer may lack the skill set or the bandwidth to fully manage their security apparatus. In that case, we offer our Active Threat Analytics service that provides a staffed SOC, or Security Operations Center, to manage their security ecosystem. And three, if a breach happens, your customer may need help managing the situation, in which case you can position our incident response services. Now, switching gears a bit, who are the buyers for this solution? First, it's your typical IT security manager or your chief information security officer. These buyers have a direct stake in ensuring the security of their organizations. Second, because AMP for Endpoints is a desktop application, the desktop IT team will likely have a say in the purchase of it, even if they aren't security focused. Third, because security breaches can cost organizations millions, don't be surprised if the C-suite becomes involved as well. And finally, engage with the customer's security analyst or incident responders. They'll want to dive deep on how AMP for Endpoints can rapidly respond to attacks. So that's AMP for Endpoints. I encourage you to take the next step and learn more. Visit the pages on screen to find a multitude of selling resources, like overview videos, demos, competitive battle cards. Use these resources to help you sell. Thanks for watching, and happy selling.